Welcome to Layer the Alchemist, where we discuss all things heavy metal and hard rock. On today's episode, ranking the Dio guitar players. Ronnie James Dio is my favorite heavy metal vocalist of all time, and I love pretty much everything that Ronnie's been involved in. Rainbow, Black Sabbath, the Dio band. So I thought it would be fun to rank the guitar players that he's had in his band. It's interesting because I often think of Dio sort of like Ozzy, where he always had a great guitar player with him, and you always sort of associated Dio with whoever was also playing guitar in his band. They were like a team, sort of the same thing with Ozzy. So this was a hard list to make because all the guitar players that Dio's had are really, really good. And I associate the players too with the albums that they're on. I'm assuming that the guitar players were involved to varying degrees in the songwriting and brought certain riffs down and stuff like that, and affected the songwriting on the records. So not only am I sort of judging them on their guitar playing ability, I'm also sort of judging them on the riffs and things like that are on the records. So all right, number 5. Somebody had to come in at number 5. He's a great guitar player, but for me, Rowan Robertson. This is not my favorite Dio record. I think he's a good bluesy guitar player, but not a whole lot jumps out at me. It's the riffs are there's some good riffs on here. Like the opening track Wild One and Hey Angel and Lock Up the Wolves is pretty cool, but there's way too many kind of sluggish riffs on here. It never really kicks into a higher gear that I would like it to. So for that, I put Rowan Robertson at number 5. All right, this is probably going to surprise some people because he's actually done the most albums with Dio out of any of his guitar players, but Craig Goldy. And he almost got higher on my list because I do really like this record. But after this record, I just do not care for Greg's playing. Just doesn't do anything for me. I think a lot of his riffs, they just never have enough energy for me. They're a little bit too simple, too straightforward for me. His soloing later on, I think on this particular record, I really like his soloing on this one. He's got some really cool riffs on here. I never really cared for his guitar tone. So really after this record, like Master of the Moon and Magica, the guitar playing just doesn't do anything for me, and it's a shame because there's moments where it's sort of the same thing that happened on Lock Up the Wolves, where there's just a lot of plodding guitar riffs and things that I just wish that they just had a little bit more fire and more energy to them, and I just don't get it. And it's sort of the same thing with the soloing after this record, with the soloing where I just wish that there was a little bit more to it. But since I love this record so much, this is edged out Rowan Robertson just by a little bit for me, really because of this record, because I do like this record. Okay, next. Killing the Dragon. Try to hold this here. It's got a lenticular 3D cover on it. It's hard not to get a glare on it, but Killing the Dragon. I'll turn it a different way. Doug Aldrich. Man, I wish Doug had hung around for longer because he really reminds me a little bit of like Vivian Campbell. He's got a lot of fire in his playing. His lead playing. He's got a ton of energy to it. I love a lot of the riffs on here. Killing the Dragon. The song is just great and the riffing on it is awesome. I love his guitar tone on this. And man, I really wish that Doug had hung around. I would have loved to have seen him work on another album with Ronnie, because I believe that there was a number of songs on here that were written with Craig Goldy. But I just think it's a cool record. I really like the guitar playing on this, and it's probably the most old school or closest to Vivian Campbell between Rowan and Craig. I think Doug Aldrich is the closest to Vivian Campbell, and that sort of classic Dio sound with the riffing and just he plays fast solos, but there's a lot of feel to them, and so it's a nice mixture of like technique and feel. So, all right, now this is probably going to surprise some people because I know a lot of people don't like this guy's guitar playing, and a lot of people really think he's sort of ruined the Dio band at this time. But number 2 for me is Tracy G. All right, so let me explain why I have Tracy G so high up on this list. I had drifted away from heavy metal in the late 80s, like 89, 90, 91. It was just a time in my life. I was in college. A lot of the bands that I like weren't putting out records that I was really into. And I just drifted away from metal for a little while. And that's probably a topic for another video. But when I heard Strange Highways, it really got me interested and excited to get back into finding what was going on with a lot of my favorite metal and hard rock artists. And what I really liked about Tracy G at that time in the early 90s, it was a time where alternative grunge and stuff was really popular, and people were searching for different ways to play the guitar. I think of Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine, for instance. He was using the guitar in a new, very unique way. And I think that Tracy fit that time frame really well. He had almost like I want to say industrial kind of sound to it. He had a really nasty guitar sound. He tuned his guitar down really low. His riffs were really kind of unique. They weren't like sort of stock old school sounding metal riffs. They were really kind of felt more modern. His soloing, he had a different kind of soloing style. Again, it wasn't in the classic shredding kind of way. He had a lot of technique, but he did more like crazy weird type of things. He did a lot of like sound effect type things. Reminded me a little bit of like Tom Morello, where he would use his whammy bar and do these squeals and noises and stuff. And just his riffs were really quirky and weird and took strange turns to them. And I love Strange Highways. And I also really like Angry Machines, which is an album that a lot of people don't like. But I just love that super thick, heavy guitar sound that Tracy G gets. I also loved the way he when he played live with Dio, that he really like just put his own spin on those older songs. And I know that's sort of what got him let go from the band, that he sounded so different than anybody that had come before him. But that's why I really liked him. And I thought at that time in the 90s, he was a perfect guitar player for Dio. It sort of brought it into the 90s when there was a lot of, death metal and alternative and grunge and stuff like that, down-tuned guitars and stuff like that. I thought that Tracy G fit right into that and brought Dio into that era nicely. And, Dio had come out of the Dehumanizer album with Black Sabbath, that was a really heavy, kind of dark sounding record. And it really felt like Strange Highways was a continuation of where he left off with Dehumanizer, the direction that he was going in that, a more gritty, industrial, not industrial like in a gothic industrial way, but just like the riffs were real evil sounding and angular and, weird angles and twists and turns and choppy and blocky at times. But it just really worked for me. Vinny Appice's drumming also just adds to that heavy, chugging feel that a lot of these songs have. So I really just appreciated Tracy G's just coming in and really having a very unique approach to coming into the Dio band like that, and not trying to sound like an old school 80s sort of guitar player. He really came in and gave it a real 90s guitar feel to it, and I really loved that, and it got me reinterested in what was going on with metal and what was going on with Dio and some of the other bands that I had lost touch with for a little while there in the late 80s, early 90s. Okay, so there's only one left. You know who it is, right? Vivian Campbell. What can we say? I love the first 3 Dio records. And Vivian Campbell for me is, I kind of put him in like with You think of Ozzy and Randy, and I think of Dio, Ronnie, and Vivian Campbell here early on. And Vivian on this record and The Last in Line. And I'm also a big fan of Sacred Heart also. I just think there's great playing on here. Vivian has really great riffs. Definitely a chemistry with Jimmy Bain and Vinny Appice. That was proven later on when they started the Last in Line band. And it's shown here, and I just think that he's got great riffs. His soloing is great, like the guitar solo in Holy Diver is just fantastic. The guitar solo in Rainbow in the Dark is great. I love his guitar sound. I especially love his guitar sound on The Last in Line, where he had a little bit more overdubbed some more guitars and stuff, and he has a cool sound. Again, I love these records too. The songs on them are great. The riffs on them are great. One Night in a City, We Rock. The song Sacred Heart, King of Rock and Roll. I love that song. Great riffing, fantastic soloing. Vivian had a lot of he could play crazy fast, but he had kind of a blues thing, a Gary Moore, but like, super Gary Moore on 11, if you will. But he also just did a lot of like cool sort of outside the box type of things, where he would do like bends or just like runs moving up the neck and stuff like that. So I just love Vivian Campbell. I'm so glad he's back playing guitar like this again with the Last in Line band, because I really do love those Last in Line albums. And it made me realize how much I do really, really love his playing on these first three Dio records. And it's such a shame that they weren't able to go on and make some more records together, or it's such a shame that Ronnie passed away, because I really think that at some point they would have made amends, and it would have been so cool to have an album with the classic lineup again. So Vivian Campbell, I love his playing. Great riffs, great soloing, great feel, and tone. Great combination of feel and technique. So, all right, there you go. There's my ranking of the 5 Dio guitar players. Let me know, who are your favorite players? How would you rank them? What do you think of my list? I think Tracy G surprised some people, but I don't know. Let me know. Let me know what you guys think. Put it down below. Make sure you hit like and subscribe, and we rock.